We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good morning and welcome to the Monday edition of Free Association Radio. I am your host, Robert Phoenix, and it is 6/11/12. There's always an interesting sort of run on the news whenever we get into the 11s, where there seems to be, whether it's 3/11, Fukushima, 9/11, Hiroshima, 9/11, 4/11, 7/11, today is 6/11, and in the tradition of offering up interesting bits of news and synchronistic data, which aligns with the numerological programming that many of us are entrained into, we're going to have our guest of the day on in just a moment. Her name is Sherry Schreiner, and she is a truth teller, and I think maybe, I would say more importantly, but as an interesting side note, she's also learned how to become a zombie killer. And we're going to talk to her about the use of orgone as it relates to disabling zombies and who the zombies are, why they're here, and what we need to do with them. Hold on to your seats. It's going to be an interesting 50 minutes or so as soon as I bring Sherry on the air. Just a few news updates here. I've got a new post on the website, robertphoenix.com. You can go there and check it out. I'm going to try to be posting a little more regularly. My schedule has been a little crazy over the last couple of weeks, as some of you know, but I'm going to get back into the regular swing of things only because it feels good and there's a lot happening out there, so I can definitely find there's plenty of copy and content to write about. So check that out. It's on what happened during the Venus transit, images of the goddess and how it impacted the mainstream in terms of what happened during the Venus transit and just after the Venus transit, especially when the equal pay bill did not pass. And perhaps I'll get into that more on Wednesday. I'm going to try and get a guest for the Wednesday show. There's a fellow by the name of William Stick Evans, and an interesting cat. I've met him on Facebook. He's doing a lot of predicting about the economic downturn. He reminds me a little bit of Theo White in some ways. So I'm going to have him on the show, or try to have him on the show, and see if we can talk about some of his predictive models as it relates to the economy. So there's that going on, and it looks like things are going to hit the crisis point in Syria. There's an all-out war going on in Syria right now. Assad is desperately trying to keep himself in power and deal with the quote-unquote rebels who are really NATO forces. So NATO is in Syria right now fighting Assad, and it's going to be interesting what happens there, because Syria had been a long time ally of the Russians, and the Russians have been pushing back fairly firmly on any kind of intervention in Syria. But that does not seem to be working out for the Syrians too well. And there's a reason for that. I may get into that a little bit later, because I think there's a bigger fish for the Russians to fry, much bigger. If you're listening to this broadcast, and you're within the continental, you're within the definition of the continental U.S., you may have some investment in that. So, okay, here it is. It's 10:05. You're listening to the Monday Mashup. I'm Robert Phoenix, and I'm going to bring my guest on here. Her name is Sherry Schreiner. She's a truth teller and more. She's going to tell us how we can disable a zombie. So let's bring her on. Sherry Schreiner. Hello,
Robert.
Hey, Sherry. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
You know, I'm getting there. I just woke up not too long ago, so I'm about to take my first sip of coffee, which will send me into the proper modality to have a lucid conversation with you.
Yeah, get ready for the next hour. Yeah, you know. Well, at least it's coffee. I know my kids have driven me back to coffee, too. I went off of it for 2 years, so.
Yeah, you know, there's something to be said about not drinking coffee. It takes a while, but once your body kind of gets back into the homeostatic, balance of not having coffee, you're like, well, why did I even have coffee to begin with? You know, it's just one of those things. And you get back on it and you say, why did I ever give up coffee? You know, it's a funny
Exactly.
thing.
You must be on the coffee cycle. I've started it.
Yeah, and I've been on the coffee cycle for a couple of years now, and for a while I tried to go to like green tea and mate and stuff like that. It was good. It was okay, but I don't know. I keep reading that caffeine will keep you from getting Alzheimer's, so it encourages my coffee consumption.
Yeah, I'm a green tea fan myself too.
So let's talk a little bit about you. I've been kind of tracking you for a few years now, and you've always been on the edge in terms of breaking what I would call alternative research or conspiratorial news, and people have an interesting reaction to you. They're either very into you or they're not into you at all, and there's not a lot of middle ground with you.
Right.
And I wanted to kind of ask you, just before we get into the zombie thing, I want to find out a little bit more about you. How did you decide that you wanted to, stand up and, well, not even stand up. First of all, you wanted to look around and find out what the hell was wrong on this planet. That's number one. And then number two, what motivated you to become a public person around this? So let's start off with your awakening moment. You're in the Matrix, and you all of a sudden you wake up, and then there's the, hey, I need to get this off my chest moment.
Well, I was just, back in, 91, when Bush Sr. announced the formation of a New World Order.
Mm-hmm.
It just made my eyebrows jump off my face, because I've always been a student of Bible prophecy in the last days. And when he said that, I knew this was it. He's talking about the last days global government. And I started doing a lot of research into the New World Order, getting involved with the Patriot community, where the Lord pulled me aside and basically said, I want you to study this aspect of the New World Order, and I got into the alien agenda. And so I've always been a bit controversial to most people because I bring information too early. They're not, it's new to them. They can't get out of the comfort zone. They don't want to step out of the box. For some, it takes several years to grasp what I'm talking about. But when they start to see it, then they can believe it. You know what I'm saying? It starts to become familiar with them. So for some people, I'm just a bit too early. They're not ready for me. For others, they know exactly what I'm talking about is true. They can follow me closely, and it's just like I said, like you said, it's very cutting edge stuff people aren't ready to hear. But if you go back and listen to my archives, you can listen to my archives, my own shows from 2004, 2005. It's like I was speaking yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always just been one step ahead. The Lord's always put me one step ahead. He taught me how to decipher Bible codes. I'm in the Hebrew Bible codes almost every day and night. I use those for information, also to confirm things I've learned. And I just use various sources. I have an intel team. I get a lot of good analysis. We talk about things. And so it's a variety of ways in the Lord himself and how I gather my info.
So, Sherry, do you work with whistleblowers? Do you have people on the inside that tell you stuff?
Yeah, I do. I've got people everywhere, basically, and it wasn't always the case. For a long time, I was just going out there on a limb by myself because the Lord revealed something to me and telling people, look, this is what the Lord told me. And people would scoff. They wouldn't know what to believe until several years later. And so now it's gotten so, time is speeding up. And so I'm getting a lot more information. People I've been following for years, they know I'm legit. They'll give me info. And they know I don't reveal sources. So I'll be mocked at and take a hit rather than reveal sources. I don't care.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. Let me ask you a question. If you've got people on the inside, and I'm sure that you've had some significant dialogues with them, and I'm sure you've asked questions like, well, why doesn't somebody do something, right? Why doesn't somebody, say, within the upper echelon of the armed forces, or somebody, maybe a fifth column faction inside the FBI or the CIA, why don't they do something? Why isn't, or maybe something has been done and we don't know about that? Can you give us some insight into that question and maybe that dynamic?
Well, my whistleblowers all realize that there is a group and faction of people that work above us that has taken out the government, basically. This shadow government that you've probably heard about.
Yeah.
They realize all that's in place. They realize who's in charge. And so I don't get any kind of that questions from them. I might get it from somebody else. What I get from my whistleblowers is, why does God allow this? Why doesn't he stop it?
Right. Well,
they might be Satanists and they might be occultists, but they acknowledge that, hey, why does God allow this to continue if there's a God? Most of them are very agnostic.
Right.
And so that's the kind of things I deal with my whistleblowers, because they already know it's there. That's not, they deal with it every day. They work within it.
You got it. I understand that, but I guess my question is, it's like there's got to be at least some dialogue between you and them, or them and other people, as to if they're on the inside, can't they monkey wrench this thing? Why is there not more happening in terms of people that are aware inside of the quote unquote corridors of power? I guess that's my question to you. And have you asked them that question?
Well, I guess you could revert it back to the early retirement plan. If you're going to make a big ruckus and be rebellious against their plans and their agenda, you're going to find yourself in a casket somewhere, in a river, in a ditch, in a car accident, with cancer, with a brain aneurysm. They have a way of getting rid of troublemakers. And so you don't ask a whole lot of questions when you're working for the government.
Right. Right. Well,
they ask me them, but they're not going to make us think of their jobs or where they work, because they know it's the status quo.
Right. Do you think from being involved in this for as long as you've been involved with, do you think that there is going to be any kind of fifth column movement or white hat posse or any, you got guys like David Wilcock and Benjamin Fulford, who I think are both completely mind controlled, by the way.
Well, there's always this hope. They always throw out this hope. Oh, look, Benjamin Fulford and the White Hat Society, they're going to stop the New World Order. They must be the good guys.
Right.
And then you see him advertising for people to join their cause, and they're accepting Freemasons and all these occultists that dominate the New World Order itself that people are trying to get away from.
Yeah.
So how are they any different?
Yeah.
They're all under the same umbrella. It doesn't matter what color they are, they're under the umbrella.
So we just had a major sort of, I guess it was a pivot on the behalf of the Ron Paul people. We had Rand Paul essentially hooking his wagon to Mitt Romney, and Mitt Romney stands for nothing that the Paul people and the Paul acolytes stand for. And Ron Paul has been pretty much MIA, and there's virtually no communication or video or anything happening with Ron Paul. We just see his son throwing his support behind Romney. And I told people for quite a while that this whole Ron Paul movement was really about controlled opposition. And I saw that in 2008 when there was a lot of momentum and a lot of money being put in behind Paul. And then when the voter irregularities happened in New Hampshire, he was pretty much mute, and he just went on to the next campaign stop. And then he just folded his tent about halfway through the primaries. And when that happened, I realized that this was not a guy that was going to, run the distance or declare himself as an independent candidate. And I've looked at him askance ever since then. And now we have this affiliation between Rand Paul and Mitt Romney. What was your take on the whole Ron Paul movement and what it was set up to, I think, really be a controlled opposition movement?
Well, you're exactly right. They're both controlled opposition. But there's different factions within the Satanist groups themselves. And so you have the one group that likes Obama, throws their support behind Obama. They're both the same. As I call them, Obama. And then you have the ones with Mitt Romney. And then you have the ones with Ron Paul. He's one of them, too. There's nothing that comes out of left field. There's nothing that happens by chance.
Yeah.
And Ron Paul was a database builder. He was like, okay, let's get a list of all his supporters because whoever votes for Ron Paul is against the status quo, which means they're probably anti-New World Order. And so he becomes a great tool to become a database builder of possible terrorists in America.
Right.
You know, they build their terrorist list, constantly. And anybody, that should have been so obvious back when he closed down his campaign really early, the last time in 2010.
Yeah, it's obvious to me, for sure. It was like
he just closed it down really early, wasn't there, and then he had all those funds. And when you run for president, you get to keep all the funds you've raised.
That's right. You get to keep it. You don't have to give it back. You don't have to disperse it. I mean, it was a nice cachet for him.
Exactly, and he quit early, so he still had all that money. He didn't blow the last hurrah in the commercials and stuff for advertising and promotion.
Right.
And then they brought him back, for this one.
Yeah, well, he didn't get any of my money this time. He did get money out of me the first time. I was a little naive. I thought that perhaps this could be the wrinkle in the matrix. And then after New Hampshire, was like, what? Come on now.
Yeah, he is a wrinkle, but he's a different faction. He would be like in the Fulford faction. He's white alien. He's what they call a white knight politician. He was the alien New Age agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And so they all represent different agendas within the New World Order itself.
Yeah.
Like I said, all under the umbrella, even though, you have different colors, different agendas, but all under the same umbrella. They all have the same boss.
You got into this through NESARA. You were tracking the Ron Paul, Kucinich, Cynthia McKinney faction through this NESARA thing. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, you know what? NESARA is the whole basis of the white knight alien agenda. A new world economic program. Get rid of the Federal Reserve, restore our monetary system back to precious metals. And you're seeing it happen now with the global reset. We're going to have a new global banking system introduced here shortly within the next month or two.
Yeah.
You're seeing NESARA take over now. The alien New Age agenda is a new regime, but it's coming out, replacing the regime we have now. So you're going to see a merge of the New World Order crowd that we have now in with the alien New Age crowd, and then the New Age thing is going to take over. It's what they call the Age of Aquarius.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's going to be this new regime that takes over, and so that's kind of like we're in a transition period now. And Fulford and Drake, they kind of serve as the transitional mouthpieces.
Mm-hmm.
People don't know whether to believe them or not. They don't like them, or they might like them. They're basically transitional tools.
What's your position on cloning?
On cloning?
Yeah.
They do it all the time. They've been doing it for 20, 30 years.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And we've been seeing series generational cloning, which is basically they get a batch of DNA that they like. They've mixed a DNA batch they like, and they make 10, 15 people off the same type of DNA. That's why people see doppelgangers everywhere.
Yeah.
People that look alike, and they're in different parts of the world.
Right.
That's what I call batch cloning, batch series. It's not direct cloning, but they use the same batch of DNA. Then you have regular cloning, where you just clone an individual. But I've heard they've had a lot of problems with that. Direct clones themselves don't live very long. They're prone to illnesses.
Right.
And they kind of act robotic and retarded. And so, they usually use, if they're going to outright clone something, they usually use it as a shell, and then they put something in it. They can put a human soul in it. They can put an alien soul in it. They use it as a shell, basically.
Well, it's when you look at people in the media, like say Zooey Deschanel and Katy Perry, who look almost exactly alike, or you look at say Gaga and Amy Winehouse, who, when you strip away all the makeup and the sunglasses and everything else that they use as a fashion statement to really shield who they are facially, you begin to see these similarities popping up with all these different people in the media, how much they look alike. It's startling, to be honest with you.
Right, it's that series cloning.
Yeah.
And people have a hard time accepting that one because, well, they were born from different mothers. Well, they abduct these women at night. They can impregnate them. And then they do this all the time. People think it's an alien agenda, but our government does it too.
Right. What about, one of the things that I had heard, by the way, is that Fulford is a clone. I've heard there's a number of Fulfords.
Yeah, he even admits he has a clone now and all this. And so, I think the whole thing just blew credibility at that point.
He admits he's admitted he's a clone?
He has one.
Oh,
the original Benjamin Fulford was captured in L.A. at a hotel and taken to an island as prisoner. And while he was gone, they had a clone out representing Benjamin Fulford. Well, they went out and found the original Ben, brought him back, so now you had the one cloned acting like him with the real one.
Right.
So it was I kind of lost interest at that point.
Yeah. So the global economic reset, it's happening. I mean, what we're seeing in Spain and soon to be Italy and Europe's going to be it's going to be a forest fire, an economic forest fire. It already is. They can't.
Well, the euro's going to crash. They're engineering that.
Yeah.
It's all engineered.
So when that happens, with the global reset, so obviously the ultimate goal for this is digital currency, with the chip being the form of transaction. How far off do you think we are from the chip?
Well, I don't know about the chip itself, but I know Nasera, we should start seeing this global reset dominant in July and August.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been kind of following that. I don't know if they'll introduce the digital chip stuff then or just wait.
Right.
But they're going to give everybody they've been bribing them, the stuff they've been bribing us. We're going to get rid of the federal treasury. We're going to back our currency by metals. And what this does is crash the euro and the dollar, crashes all the fiat money.
Right.
And so we're going to go through a huge economic crash, basically. Wall Street's going to crash. Our entire economy, the dollar, is going to crash. And when they introduce this new metals-backed currency, inflation's going to set in. We're basically going to see a reset in our own economy, in our own country.
Right.
Literally global, because the people who have been literally the third world status, well, now they're going to be privileged. They're going to have a valued currency that's increased in value, where everybody else's, the rich countries, devalue.
Because of what they have in terms of their own metals and minerals and everything else that they can back that currency with. Is that what you're talking about?
Right, exactly. And plus their currencies are being revalued by the same people engineering this whole thing.
So
they want everybody on the same playing field. They want a dollar, a yen, a yuan, a euro. They want it all to be worth the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's their ultimate goal.
Right. Do you think that we're going to get some form of paper currency with some sort of digital tracking in it, or do you think it's going to go to a card first?
Well, all the cards have chips in them, and
sure,
they can put chips in all of the paper money.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
So they'll probably just introduce that more monopoly money again.
Right. So it would just be a different kind of money, but perhaps more trackable, worth less value.
Yeah, and it probably won't say Federal Treasury note on it. It'll probably say something else.
Right. What's the whole fascinating thing about the money situation is that currency becomes the face of a nation in some ways. And we had very similar currency for many, many years. It was, the American dollar, the e pluribus unum dollar, and then it started to change. It started to change in the 90s, and then it started to change, on a consistent basis. And it was like there's very little representation of what money looks like now as it looked like, say, 25 years ago. And that's all very conscious. And that gets people thinking about the sovereignty or reassigning sovereignty and the value of sovereignty in a very different way.
Yeah, it conditions people for changes. Look, this can change.
Yeah.
We're changing colors now. We're changing styles. It's getting conditioned to change.
Right.
So look,
right.
we have a new currency now. We have a new currency again.
Yeah.
Look, we got another currency. Change. It's conditioning people for change. And also what they do is every time they print new currency, they hide new attacks inside them. You can use the money to, you've probably seen those people who can fold the dollar bill a certain way and find the towers on fire and everything else.
Right.
They also add that in. So it's very interesting.
So the whole change concept too. I'm a sports guy. I like watching sports. I know it's kind of whatever, but I still enjoy it. And I watch it from a place of social commentary as well, because when things happen in sports, I can also get a sense as to what's happening kind of with the bigger picture. And you get a school like the University of Oregon, which is basically run and funded by Phil Knight of Nike, and you watch their uniforms, and they literally have 50 uniforms. And again, this gets back to your whole concept of change, and that everything is fluid. There is no baseline. That everything is open to change, and you can see that across the board in a lot of different segments in society. You look at people in Hollywood, and they're constantly changing their hairstyle. They're constantly changing their look, and this is all part of this whole change motto and change mindset. And so it's not just money. It's across the board.
Right, because they don't want people getting static. They want to condition people slowly. Look, things are going to change this week, next week. Things are changing.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into this zombie thing. This is why I brought you on the show. And I've been tracking you for a while, and pre-zombie mania, you'd been talking about this on your website or other bits and pieces of information I'd read from you, and you were talking about orgone as a way to take down a zombie, to destabilize a zombie. First of all, let's talk about zombies in general, and then we'll get to the orgone bit, because I've got some interesting questions to ask you about orgone. I've got some theories around the zombification. I'd love to hear your theories, especially maybe because I don't really have a lot of Christian researchers on the show, but I'm interested in your perspective of zombies and the apocalypse, and maybe what the Bible might say about zombies. Let's talk about zombies. What do you think they are? What do you think is causing people to turn into zombies? And let's talk about prophecy in zombies.
Okay. In Revelation chapter 6, verse 8, it talks about the pale horse rider. And there's 4 horses of the apocalypse: the white horse, the red horse, the black horse, and the pale horse. The pale horse rider, when he brings with him death by sword, hunger, famine, and beasts of the field. When you break this down, sword is a weapon of war, not necessarily just wars everywhere, but a weapon of war. Mm-hmm. And beasts of the field being animals. In the Hebrew Bible codes, aliens are referred to as animals and beasts. And so, with that as your basis, because the New World Order likes to be self-fulfilling for some reason. I like to self-fulfill Bible prophecy. They know it better than most of people sitting in the churches today. Churches don't even preach it today. This whole zombie apocalypse is something the Lord brought to my attention several years ago, which is why I started beating the drums, especially about 2 years. Yeah, last year I started. And that's when the CDC and all of them started coming out with their zombie apocalypse manuals, how to survive it. Everything was. They came out with all that when I started beating the drums on it last year, because I saw it was coming. And the whole thing, Hollywood's been conditioning us for years about zombies. Hollywood would reveal all of the New World Order plans. That's why they have a close relationship with the Pentagon and the CIA. They reveal all of their plans. A lot of the shows, a lot of the producers, directors in Hollywood are all related and tied to the Masons. Mm-hmm. And they will reveal X-Files. It was owned by the Masons. They'll reveal a lot of their plans.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this whole zombie attack in Florida recently, where the man ripped off the other man's homeless face, his face.
Right.
I asked the Lord immediately. I said, "What happened?" And He said the man had eaten something laced with a chemical that caused that flesh-eating monster savage within him. Mm-hmm. And so I knew it was something he ate. It was laced with a chemical.
Right.
So I started listening and reading the reports surrounding the whole zombie attack in Miami. And 2 of the things that jumped out at me was that the man had been at a party on a beach earlier. Then he got sick to where he wasn't feeling well. Mm-hmm. And so I'm figuring they gave him something at that beach. There was something at that beach party he ate that was laced, because this whole zombie pandemic thing is based on chemicals. It's based on a certain virus chemical.
Yeah.
And so they kind of went to, drug addict. Oh, he's this. Oh, he's that. You know how they are.
Right.
And they wanted everybody to accept bath salts as the reason. Oh, it's bath salts. That's what it is. It's drugs. And they're going to deny it's a virus for a while now because they know when they deny things everybody else knows is true, that the people get furious with them and agitated.
Right.
And so they're trying to build this in people. They're denying it's a virus. Then they're going to say, oh, okay, we accept it. It is a virus because there's going to be more attacks coming out this week, next week. There's going to be more attacks. And then they'll accept a solution, which is their vaccine they've had in waiting all this time.
Right.
It's all about the vaccine that they have coming out. And so these attacks, this man in Florida, this woman in California, these two men in New Jersey, they have been individually targeted, either directly or indirectly, by literally ingesting something that was purposely contaminated with the zombie virus to cause to happen what happened. And then right now they're purposely engineering this. Eventually, when the vaccines start, all of this virus for the zombie will automatically be in the vaccine. So everybody who takes this vaccine, you're going to see a huge push in incidences, and it's going to take on a life of its own because it's already in the vaccine. So people who take the vaccine are going to become your next vicious attackers. This flesh-eating virus in the vaccines.
Well, it's interesting because I was just, I've got Netflix, and they're starting to show the X-Files on Netflix now, and I've been going through a number of the X-File episodes, and there's quite a few episodes where there are references to zombies, or there are references to aliens taking over humans vis-a-vis some form of bacteria or some form of virus. And there's probably about half a dozen shows in the X-Files that actually cover this territory. Right,
and you know what? I like the X-Files. I wish I'd paid more attention to it. I think I was in college and school back when it was, a weekly series, whatever. But I catch the reruns now if I can. Reveal a lot of truth in the X-Files. They really do. This vaccine, this virus that's causing this outbreak now, that is being, I guess you could say, individually caused because it has to be, on purpose. They give you something laced with it and you get it. What it is it's a two-punch type of thing. There is a chemical with the virus in it, and there is a parasite. There is a worm inside the chemical. And so the chemical kills the person, the virus kills the person, and then the worm, the parasite, grows within the person and takes over. And it's this parasite that has been engineered to be extremely hostile and vicious and a flesh eater. So it's almost like a two-punch. You get the virus, you get the worm. And it's this worm that takes over the person's brain, fuses with the human's DNA, and causes this savage flesh-eating action to occur. So it's kind of like a two-pronged punch here.
So let's just say for the sake of discussion that a lot of people are already harboring this virus and they don't even know it. Okay, how can we deal with that? If we've got a nascent worm virus that can flip us into a zombie, what can we do about that?
Well, you know what? I don't think it's going to lay dormant for some people. It might, but I think you're going to see a pretty quick reaction. I think from the time the guy was on the beach at the beach party to the time he became a vicious attacker was about 10 to 15 hours.
Yeah.
And so if that's what our gauge is, if that's what we have to go by, then you're looking at within a day, maybe a day after getting this vaccine. So maybe there's a time delay trigger so everybody doesn't put two and two together. Oh, it must be from this vaccine. I don't know how they're going to hide it, but that's what caused it. That's what's going to cause it. That's what's causing it now.
Yeah, my sense, Sherry, is that I think a lot of people have it. That's my sense, and it's dormant. And I think chemtrails actually delivered a lot of it.
Well, we haven't seen the push yet because they're coming out with a huge vaccine push. They're going to scare the public with these incidents. There's going to be more.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of media attention. Oh, this is drugs. This is bath salts. And then they'll, to the point where, okay, it's a virus. Now accept our solution. They're going to scare people into getting the vaccine.
I agree with you with that. I do agree with you with that. I just think that if, my research with chemtrails, if you get down and you look at like chemtrails and Morgellons, you'll see that there are these really hideous looking macrophages that are part of the chemtrail delivery, and that's people that they're hanging out in people.
Oh, you can put this zombie virus in chemtrails.
Yeah. That's my sense.
And Magellan's obviously being from chemtrails as well. There's plagues coming on this earth we've never had before because they're not human. They're not from this earth. They're not bacterial. They're not fungus.
Right.
They're alien tech. They're alien technology. They're brought in. Even this zombie virus thing is brought in from the moon.
Uh-huh.
And it's stored in locations around the world so they can unleash it on the public. It goes back to the agenda I told you I've been in for years, the New Age alien agenda. It's the aliens who have run the New World Order, who have taken over our world, who want to depopulate it. They want to kill mankind off of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this is their sword. This is when the aliens go to war with each other, they use bio-warfare.
Yeah.
And this is their technology. And it's the aliens who control our CDC, our FDA, Monsanto, the New World Order, Obama, the Bushes, Clintons. They control all of that.
So when you say aliens, are there a specific branch that you could refer to? Are they Greys? Are they reptilians? What are we talking about here?
There's different branches. Right now, the New World Order is dominated by the reptilians. But the Zetas and the others want to take over. They all fight amongst themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Aliens are nothing but fallen angels. The Bible refers to them as fallen angels. As part of their judgment for their rebellion against God, and they were kicked out of heaven, they lost their angelic looks.
Mm.
And so they became these ugly creatures. And over the generations, they have had offspring. And they just multiply, and they divide up into these different groups and factions, live on different planets and star systems. Christians aren't taught this in church. They go to sleep. They don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
And so aliens are just fallen angels. But Satan, even they won't deny, Satan gets a small window of opportunity where he gets to own the world. He gets to control the world for 3.5 years. And when he does, he's going to be having his forces with him, which is the aliens, fallen angels, demons, his whole kingdom there. And so when the Pale Horse Rider comes and he's getting ready to set, he's permitted to kill 1/4 of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm pondering last night, okay, what is 1/4 of the earth? If we're going population-wise, there's almost 7 billion people, so 1/4 of the earth who succumb to death and plagues and hunger and sword would be roughly 1.8 billion people. Or is he talking land mass? Is it just North and South America?
Right. Yeah.
So because it seems to be affecting America first and foremost, and so you'd have to assume this part of the land mass of the earth. So either way, 1/4 of the earth, he's allowed to kill off. That's a lot of people in a short period of time because Satan only gets to rule the world for 42 months.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking just with these plagues alone. Some people argue the tribulation period is 7 years. Some say it's 42 months. Either way, even within 7 years, losing billions of people because there's more judgments coming, not just 1/4 of the earth that he's allowed to kill.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this is how they do it, through these bio-warfare, these engineered...
Through the plagues.
Yeah.
Yeah. I by the way, my take on the Pale Horse is the Pale Horse was the appearance of the white Ford Bronco that O.J. Simpson was in as they went down the freeway in Southern California. To me, that was the first sign of the apocalypse. That's why it was such a prominent event and beamed into TVs all across America. And ever since then, we've pretty much gone downhill from that event. That's my take on the Pale Horse. That was the meta event. I wanted to ask you real quick before we get into Orgone. I'm assuming that you don't believe that there's any good aliens.
No, there isn't.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about Orgone. Orgone is a very interesting thing. It was developed by Wilhelm Reich, and Wilhelm Reich has some pretty interesting theories, and some of which are fairly, I would say, anti-Christian in some ways. I mean, he was a serial masturbator, and that's pretty much known. So as an individual, Reich's got some dark patches in his VC. or CV rather, and at the same time he creates a pretty interesting technology in this orgone. How did you come across orgone, and how does it work in terms of destabilizing zombies? Let's talk about that.
Well, you know what? The Lord led me to orgone several years ago, back in 2004, 2005, when I stood up, started becoming a mouthpiece for the Lord. I was putting up websites, starting radio shows. The first thing that happened, and probably with everybody, is I started getting attacked by government weapons. I started getting elf attacks, microwave weapons. I was burned. I was fried. They were trying to give me a heart attack. I went through all that. And so I was asking the Lord, how do I stop this? Mm-hmm. How do I stop these attacks? And he led me to orgone. Mm-hmm. And so I made some orgone the way he told me how to make it. I put it in front of my computer monitor, and the heart attack stuff stopped because mm-hmm. they were elfing me through my computer monitor. So it stopped those attacks. I was like, oh, wow, this works. And so I put some outside my yard, and there was a hole above my house where everything else was chemtrailed. Uh-huh. And so I learned, wow, this thing will stop chemtrails. And so I got my entire area with orgone. And the entire area, the planes could not make chemtrails stick.
Interesting.
And so this was the beginning. I started to learn at this point exactly everything orgone could do. I had no idea when I started. Mm-hmm. And as I kept using it and asking the Lord, can I use orgone for this? Can I use orgone for that? The list just started to grow. I made a website, was selling it off the website, teaching people how to make it themselves. Mm-hmm. It's never been about money. It's always been about being able to use this to protect ourselves from them, because I was always a victim of their viciousness. Mm-hmm. And then I learned, hey, we can go on the offensive with this. It's not just a protection for us. We can also go on the offensive and tear down Satan's strongholds with this stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'm heading to alien bases around the country. I'm heading to Dulce and Taos, New Mexico, and I'm heading all these places and putting orgone everywhere. Mm-hmm. And then I'm learning that, hey, orgone water is destroying the gray aliens. It's causing their ships to crash.
Right.
It's doing all these things. And then I run into Wilhelm Reich's info. I never knew about him back when I started. Uh-huh. And then when I started learning about Wilhelm Reich, I was floored.
Yeah.
He has issues. We all do.
Yeah.
But he was originally contracted by President Eisenhower to come up with a way to destroy aliens, because they were well aware they were in our atmosphere. Eisenhower wanted a way to defeat them, go to war against them, and win. But then Eisenhower strikes a deal with aliens. Look, we'll leave you alone if you give us technology.
Yeah.
And had no use for Reich. Had him thrown in prison, all his work confiscated. Reich was eventually killed.
Yeah.
His work taken.
Yeah.
But it's been restored, and I've kind of just picked up the hammer where he left off, at the issues of, I don't really get into healing box generator and all that stuff he did for healing. I know orgone can heal. I don't get into that kind of aspect. I'm kind of in the warrior phase and self-preservation here.
Right.
And I learned how if we put this out, we made these orgone pipes. I was watching alien ships crash out of the sky constantly. I would notice that, hey, I put this pipe out last night, and already that star up there is turning orange. Uh-huh. And then a couple days later, you would, see it crashing or fire across the sky or whatever. And so it's just really picked up by chance, everything I've learned about it.
Reich talks about this. Actually, his son talks about this in the book he wrote about Reich, his father. And they talked about the cloud buster, which is what you're referring to. And they were actually able to disable these aliens, these flying saucers, because the flying saucers apparently tap into orgone as a form of propulsion.
Well, they operate off of DOE, which is dead orgone energy. Uh-huh. And so when they hit a POE area, which is positive orgone energy, they can't function. They malfunction.
Right.
Supposedly, Reich was in the desert in Roswell when that UFO crashed. He was testing out his orgone.
Interesting.
He had like an orgone mobile thing. He had these 20-foot pipes, and he did it a bit differently than I do. Uh-huh. But he was in the desert testing it out when supposedly that's the same time the UFO crashed in Roswell. Mm-hmm. Because he found that's how he was contracted at that time by Eisenhower.
Yeah. What was interesting too is that they found out that that once they killed him and took all of his papers and all of his little orgone inventions and mechanisms, they tried to turn orgone into a weapon, and it would not respond. They could not direct it to do harm towards other people, which I thought was fascinating.
They have to turn it to a DOE orgone because DOE can harm where POE does not.
Yeah.
And there's, everybody on the internet who makes orgone doesn't mean they're making positive orgone energy, good orgone. They could be making evil and not realize it. They could be making dead orgone energy.
How do you make good orgone?
Well, with the good orgone, you want to make sure that the coil is spinning in a counterclockwise direction.
Mm-hmm.
You put the crystals inside the coil. You use shavings as a insulator, and you use the fiberglass resin as it puts pressure. It creates piezoelectric energy. And I have directions. I have videos. It's very simple to make. Very simple. And it creates this positive orgone energy, and it will keep chemtrails off your head. It will crash UFOs. The aliens hate it. Demons hate it. If you have night terrors, put it under your bed. Put it in your bedroom. They'll stop coming and harassing you. That was another huge issue with me, having to go through night terrors all the time, even as an adult. It keeps all of them away from you. It has 101 uses. I have my website at orgoneblasters.com. And what the Lord has been showing me is that orgone water is almost the same as producing holy water. Because positive orgone itself, the signature between that and dead orgone energy is the positive orgone energy is almost like the Lord's breath in himself. It's almost like his own breath. We're reproducing his very breath. It's a positive, healing, life force energy. And in the Bible codes, I see breath all the time.
Interesting.
And so when you put this, put an orgone puck or two in a gallon of water, let it saturate for a day, you've got good orgone water. When you spray that on an evil and wicked being, it's like acid to them, and it kills them. It'll kill demons. It'll kill aliens. Anything evil and wicked. Now, people want to know if it'll work on certain kids because they're brats, and it doesn't work on humans unless they're completely evil possessed.
So you advocate getting like a super soaker and filling that super soaker up with orgone water, and that should be your handy sidearm during the outbreak of the zombie apocalypse, right?
Well, certainly, because you know what? I mean, I know all these Rambos out there are going to go get their 12 gauges and their guns and their bullets. You're going to run out. And so water is much more effective.
Yeah, it's how many rounds did they put into the guy in Miami before?
8 rounds to take him out.
And those are what 44, 45 caliber shells, so they're not.
And he's a cop. He's trained. How many of us can pick up a gun and know what the heck we're doing with it? I pick up a gun and I'll pull the trigger and say, "Okay, Lord, put the bullet where you need it."
Yeah.
I can't aim with I can't aim. I can shoot, but I can't aim.
Right.
And loading the thing, and there's just too many, a bulk of the population of us who are not Rambos, who are not going to have guns.
Yeah.
Especially if you're out in the city, you're shopping, all of a sudden somebody goes berserk and starts coming at you. Are you going to be carried? Are you going to have an arm on you? Are you going to have a gun on you? I can put a little spray bottle in my purse, my handbag, backpack. You can put water with you. I can spray it.
Well, Sherry, you'll know you're onto something when all of a sudden they start outlawing super soakers.
And water balloons and everything else.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a whole video on how to kill zombies. Yeah, it's basically, I'm not saying guns won't work, but you have to take the brains out. What I'm saying is it's just not feasible for the majority of us.
Right. So, when I read about the using the orgone infused water to take down a zombie, what about drinking orgone infused water? Have you ever done that?
Well, I wouldn't do it directly because there's fiberglass resin. That's autobando.
Right.
In orgone. But what you can do is the Lord has told us to take orgone pucks and put them in your fridge, put them in your freezer, put them near your water sources. I have a well, so I have orgone buried in the ground around my well so it can seep down into the ground. You can put a gallon of water on top of a puck or beside it and let it affect it that way because it will work that way. You don't want to drink it directly, but you use it indirectly.
I see. And that can be healing water, theoretically?
Right. It'll purify the water to where you can drink it, because they're going to be dumping this stuff in water supplies.
Yeah.
And if they start hitting municipal water supplies with this contaminated virus, this virus worm 1-2 punch, it's going to affect a lot of people. So I'm asking the Lord, how do we get around with that? How do we get by that? And what he's telling us is that don't cook with city water. Put it in a container, put Orgo near it, let it saturate for an hour, or beside it for an hour, and let it purify the water that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because that's going to be one of their base attacks. Is they've already been trying it in Georgia. They put a bunch of contaminated water in Georgia, and you started getting these flesh-eating disease outbreaks. The one girl who lost her arms and feet.
Yeah.
It's just really sad. And what this is this was an attempt at a zombie outbreak through the water.
Uh-huh.
In Florida, it became successful through the chemical-laced whatever he ate.
Right.
And so you have different groups within these Satanist organizations fighting to be the ones to bring out the zombie virus.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, my friend Michael Edward, who lives down in Florida, has done a ton of research on core exit and the Gulf Plague, and I'm going to have him on probably the week after next, and we're going to talk about the role that core exit is playing in this. And he's seen this coming, years ago.
Oh, yeah. I was warning about core exit back when they were plastering it all over the Gulf.
Yeah.
I'm always on top of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because I always see the agenda behind it.
And I can't believe, how people can. It's such a shame because I love seafood, but I don't eat it anymore. It's just, I can't eat it. It's like I'm not going to eat any seafood from the Gulf, and I'm certainly not going to eat any seafood from California now because of what's coming over from Fukushima. But if you look at the images of the mutated seafood, it's horrific.
Right. Kind of looks like it came from the Ohio River, huh?
I'm just not sure anybody can eat that stuff based on what I'm seeing.
Right.
So.
Well, you know what? Any kind of food that you get, put it in your fridge. Make sure you've got some orgone pucks in your fridge and let that purify the food.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a really good idea.
Because it is a purifier. It's a healer. I don't focus enough on that aspect because, like I said, I'm usually in self-preservation mode here, just trying to survive.
Yeah.
They've been trying to kill me for years, so. But it does have wonderful healing properties associated with it.
Well, survival is the name of the game these days on many fronts. It's what we are here to do now. We'd like to incorporate the luxury of living, but living seems to be a kind of an abstract concept right now. We've got to just get through these pretty perilous times. So let me ask you one quick question. It's more of a philosophical question than anything else. You obviously come from a biblical tradition, and yet there are people that are waking up and they're not from a biblical tradition. And I guess the question for you, Sherry, is there a place theoretically for people who may believe in God but may not believe in the same God that you believe in, and are awakening at the same time and are open to some of the things you're talking about? Is there a place for them in quote unquote the new world, or the world that takes place after the tribulation? I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that can you not be a quote unquote born again Christian to be a part of that world? That's my question to you.
You know what? I know what you're saying in a roundabout way, and I'll address it in a roundabout way. You don't have to belong to a Christian church to be up parentheses Christian.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about religion; it's about relationship.
Uh-huh.
And that's what it boils down to with the Lord. It's your relationship with Him, and New Agers may refer to Him as a creator.
Mm-hmm.
When they're not too busy trying to claim they're gods themselves. You get into the blasphemous part of the New Ages. But there's a lot of good people in every religion stuck in apostasies,
mm-hmm.
stuck in false beliefs. But there's just a lot of genuine good people who would rather just have a direct relationship with the Lord than be involved with all these different religious backbiting denominations. And that's what it comes down to Him. It's who has a relationship with Him. It's not about religion.
Okay. Well,
and so just learning to sit at His feet, ask Him to teach you the truth in all things, learn
mm-hmm.
from Him directly, because so few do. The churches don't. They go to church They learn from their pastors only. They're very closed in what they believe. Catholics are the same way. If the priest doesn't say it, they don't believe it.
Right.
Every religion has their own tenements. You listen to this, or you're not one of us.
Right.
And it's not about religion. It's supposed to be about the Lord Himself.
Right. Right.
And so I just encourage these people to sit at His feet, ask Him to teach you the truth in all things, and learn from Him directly. He's the door.
Okay.
He's the door we're to knock on, not all these different denominations and religions.
Okay. Well, there we go. All right, Sherry, that's a wonderful place to end our interview today. I want to thank you for coming onto the show and joining us and sharing your insight, your wisdom, and let's give people your website one more time.
They can go to OrgoneBlasters.com.
OrgoneBlasters.com. All right. Beware of the zombie apocalypse. Sherry, you take care of yourself.
Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Sherry Shriner. She is the godmother of taking out the zombies for the zombie apocalypse. Interesting person. Look, she has been, she's controversial. You know, there are people that are not into, you know, what she has to say from both sides of the ledger sheet. There are Christians that don't dig her. There are alternative researchers and people that are into maybe there's a more friendly alien agenda. They're not into her, which is why I asked her that question. So she's kind of out on an island on her own. And I wanted to have her on the show because number one, I wanted to get a sense as to, I'm open to having other people from other traditions and other places, as a part of this program. It just doesn't always have to be a reflection of who I am or what I believe, because that's a pretty boring world, if you ask me. And we don't learn from each other if we're all the same, right? If we're all the same, we just sit around and reflect each other, and we're off in our kind of solipsistic new age, domain, whatever that is, whatever the new agers do, just peeling away people that they don't like or believe that are negative, and just want to have this really positive, feel-good reflection around them all the time. It doesn't always work like that, and we learn from people that are different than us. We even learn from people that are so different than us that we wouldn't even want to be associated with them. Look, there are things to learn from your quote-unquote oppressors or the people that want to manage this reality. You can learn from them. You can learn about tenacity. You can learn about vision. You can learn about networking. There's a lot of things that you can learn from people that you don't always agree with. It may not always be pleasant, but you can learn from them. Trust me on this. Okay, so Wednesday we're going to be shifting back over to astrology, and we're going to start to talk about the Uranus-Pluto square, and then we're going to get into, I'm going to try to get William Stick Evans on the show. He's a pretty interesting guy, and he does long tail astrology. So he's a mundane and horary astrologer. And the Wednesday show will be on at 9 a.m. I'm moving the time up. It's going to be an early Wednesday show, 9 a.m. I'll change the time. It may have already changed the time on the show page, but I'm going on vacation after that. So I want to do the show. It'll be 9 to 11, and then we're off and running. Maybe Friday. We'll see on Friday, depending upon what my schedule's like and what I feel like doing on Friday. All right. I want to thank, again, Sherry Shriner, OrgoneBlasters.com, for being on. I hate that voice. Oh, it's a lovely voice. I just don't like that. And I want to thank everybody for listening and being a part of the show. Sorry I didn't get into the chat room. It was a very fast 60 minutes. Time is flying these days, as we all know. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible, and learn about orgone. I think it could be quite helpful. In fact, I know it can be. All right, this is Robert Phoenix, and you've been listening to the Monday Mashup. I'll see you on Wednesday.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.